So hello, everybody. Welcome to our webinar today, hosted by XCures. Our webinar is entitled Mastering the Triple R, Right Patient, Right Treatment, Right Time, where we will discuss the applications of a real-time, real-world data platform. Quick little background on me. My name is Max Goldstein, and I'm currently the Vice President of Research Partnerships at XCures, which is a role I've held for 2.5 years, thereabouts. And prior to XCures, I spent nearly a decade in the evidence, value, and access consulting space, holding several different roles at various consultancies, including Certara and Epidera. And on the personal side, I live in New York City with my wife, Maddie, and I'm originally from Boston. Hold a master's in healthcare from NYU and a degree, undergrad degree from Brandeis University. So that's a little bit about me. I would like to start today by talking a little bit about the current options for accessing real-world data and the data lag that generally exists between when the data originates, such as a care encounter, a pharmacy fill, a claim being issued, and when that data ends up downstream in the hands of users within life science companies. There have been several recent publications that support this, and I'd be happy to send those to you afterwards as follow-up. But the data lag from, again, when that care encounter happens, patients in the doctor's office, et cetera, to when that winds up downstream in a curated data set is on the order of magnitude of several weeks, but mostly months, and sometimes even years later. And so this consistently retrospective approach of when you actually get the data to do your analytics on or what have you, and looking back, it's great for a lot of use cases, and it's certainly paved the way, certainly in the last decade, in terms of use cases and the ubiquity of real world data for many types of studies. But the way that this data is, again, curated and ends up downstream, that data lag provides limited real-time utility. There is an opportunity by introducing what we'll talk about soon in terms of technology and processes to introduce more of a real-time actionability to this data, which is super impactful, especially for patients whose data you have. So when you have data that has a bunch of data lag, any insights you make from that data set will be impactful maybe in the future for other patients, but maybe not for the patients whose data you're actually exploring. So since the current real-world data landscape cannot truly provide that sort of real-time utility, there are many unmet needs, but also many opportunities associated with and can be improved upon by real-time real-world data. And these use cases definitely span the entire product lifecycle, from clinical development through to launch and certainly post-launch as well. In the clinical development phase, clinical operations teams could optimize site and PI selection by identifying areas that see high patient throughput based on specific trial IE criteria. And a real-time data system operating at the individual patient level could be used as a revolutionary technology for trial recruitment by identifying eligible patients in real time and screening them for the trial, or identifying patients who are trajecting towards trial eligibility, engaging with them upstream of when they're going to be eligible, and sort of priming them for potential eligibility and trial matriculation into the clinical trial. With that theme, as the product is continuing through clinical development, epidemiologists can best assess the most up-to-date treatment paradigms and clinical burden by assessing real-time patient data and outcomes across specific populations, very similar to how they do now, but it's even more. It would be even more real-time, and that has implications with trial design and selecting the most appropriate treatment comparator, and making it more reflective of the treatment paradigms here and now. As the product moves through the development cycle and teams prepare for launch, a real-time data system can be leveraged by health economics, outcomes research, market access, and payer teams to provide real-time evidence to support pricing, reimbursement, and market access. And this could even take the form of adjudicating outcomes-based or value-based agreements based on the performance of individual patients and following them prospectively. So now we're starting to get to the point where we're talking about something of like a individual patient air traffic control system, right? Where you're with the patient always as they move through the healthcare system. Continuing on with that theme of the launch, med affairs teams could get real-time prescription data to identify early adopters of the product as well as laggards, and then identifying which physicians might require further scientific education about a new product. And additionally, by identifying physicians who are seeing a patient who is eligible or soon to be eligible by predicting trajectory for a specific product, MSLs can be efficiently deployed to have hyper-relevant conversations and targeted conversations with certain prescribers. Onto the post-launch situation now, with safety and PV teams tasked maybe with a REMS program as part of an FDA post-marketing requirement. A real-time data platform, again, operating somewhat of an air traffic control system for patient data, could be used to identify serious adverse events for real-time reporting, as well as potentially identifying when an AE is likely to occur, potentially by linking to wearable devices. So things like cardiac monitors or even temperature probes, right, could potentially identify or predict when an adverse event might soon occur and alert the patient in real time, maybe go to the hospital. And then finally, a real-time data platform has considerable applications and also actionability for commercial teams, which I think have previously been limited to date in its abilities to really leverage real-time data and make that and act on that data. So that real-time data platform could identify, again, patients who are eligible or soon to be eligible for a specific product or specific products, and provide direct-to-patient educational content that could be either branded or unbranded content. And a similar mechanism can be deployed for direct-to-physician communication and alerting. And then field teams could be alerted that that physician, kind of designated by their NPI number, has or soon will have an eligible patient, and then those field teams can be efficiently deployed to have targeted conversations with specific physicians. And we think that this dual direct to patient and physician approach is certainly designed to optimize pull-through and reduce field team inefficiencies by maximizing the time spent having relevant conversations with physicians who are in the midst of making a treatment decision where they may be considering your product. So if the current real-world data players can't provide that real-time utility, but as we've just discussed, there are vast applications and opportunities for a real-time patient data platform, how could one actually build such a system? Something that, like I said, operates like an air traffic control system at the individual patient level, where you know where that patient's been, where they are now, and also where they're going. And you're with them on their journey, right? So such a system would hold, we think, the following requirements. First, it would have to truly be real time. Data lags cannot exist. Data that it originates in an EMR today must be accessible within minutes to hours, as opposed to days, weeks, or months later. Infrastructure also needs to exist for real-time data access and interoperability. So things like EMR connections or even health information exchanges are examples of such infrastructure. And then to make that data digestible from a real-time feed and to make that actionable, you'd need robust technology for data processing to turn both the structured and unstructured data from across data sources into a normalized and structured record for each patient. And you'd also need that record to have the ability to prospectively refresh for each patient record. And then finally, for most of the aforementioned use cases that we've talked about, proper patient consent is going to be required. So this consent would include unrestricted access to medical records across providers and sites of care, both retrospectively and prospectively, as well as the right to recontact the patient and their providers. So that sounds like a great idea. And so at XCures, we've actually built such a platform. So the XCures platform is designed as a real-time patient data system to address all of the vast applications that we've just discussed, from clinical development through to launch and lifecycle management. So how's it work? So the XCures process starts by patient consent, which includes both a HIPAA release for accessing medical records, identity verification, and recontacting rights. The patient consent is facilitated via various funnels, including direct-to-patient via social media engagement, referrals from advocacy groups, provider and other site relationships, and via channel partners such as various covered entities and other organizations engaging with patients who are either referring them to XCures or consenting those patients directly themselves. Once that patient consent has been provided, we use our connections to national health information exchanges to get nonstop data access, enabling us to pull data ambidextrally, that's both retrospectively and prospectively, from all providers, care encounters, sites of care to get real-time data on each patient. And our current hit rate, by the way, off of the exchanges is roughly 93% and growing. And while we borrow the piping for real-time data access and records retrieval via the HIEs, the XCure's proprietary technology is in the aggregation, organization, normalization, and structuring of these records to produce real-time care summaries. By what we do is we process the raw CCDA, we convert that into FHIR-4, and we're able to do this across numerous patient domains, including demographics, labs, conditions, medications, encounters, procedures, diagnostics and genomics reports, observations and interpretations, allergy history, social history, things like smoking and drinking, for instance. And across all of those domains, currently more than 100 clinico-genomic variables are automatically structured into a longitudinal care summary. That care summary is given back to the patient via the XInform portal, and providers can view all of their consented patients via the physician-facing XDecide portal. The data is prospectively refreshed as the patient continues on their journey. And then what we have then is a FHIR-4 precision data and metadata catalog that hosts all of the structured data for each patient, creating a vast pool of real-time patient data from which we're able to continuously scan against specific program inclusion criteria. Real-time alerts are triggered when an eligible patient is identified. And we'll talk a little bit about the technology that we use to do that in a moment. But what we've built at XCures is truly what we call the X utility platform. And the idea is for it to operate and function under a right patient, right treatment, right time paradigm. So the customer is able to establish rules for clinical profiles based on program IE criteria, such as for a clinical trial or to identify a potentially eligible patient for an on-market drug. The platform provides continuous live monitoring of the XCures population, and a program recognizer provides scores for each patient against each program. And then when a potentially eligible patient is identified, real-time alerts are triggered. So patients are notified of their eligibility with educational content, again, that can be either branded or unbranded, delivered directly to their inbox. Providers are made aware that they have a patient who's potentially eligible for a specific product or program. And then the life sciences organization is alerted that a specific NPI number has a potentially eligible patient, which can be used, again, by field teams to optimize their physician engagement. So various applications of this platform, again, span the life cycle of the product, from clinical trial recruitment and site selection by asking which patient might qualify for my trial next month, or in 3 months, or right now, to med affairs, who is prescribing our competitor's drug in favor of ours, and should we have a conversation with them right now? And even sales and marketing, which physician has an eligible patient for my product right now, or soon will have an eligible patient. XCures has built a dynamic patient pool of consented patients from which we can screen for specific program eligibility. There are currently more than 100,000 patients on the platform, which is growing at a rate of roughly 5,000 new consents per month. And across this population, there are many chronic and acute illnesses represented in the patient pool, from oncology to cardiometabolic, autoimmune and immunology, neuroscience, and even orphan and ultra-orphan diseases. And that data can be refreshed in real time. And the connection to national health information exchanges means that this technology can be deployed and applied to roughly 90% and growing of the US population. The X utility platform has a precision data and metadata catalog, completely searchable and filterable, able to create cohorts based on IE criteria, and from which users can screen against specific program eligibility. The features include the ability to filter, for instance, by biomarker status, including biomarkers from specific NGS laboratories. We even have the insurance and payer and coverage information for most patients, which could be an important feature to leverage for market access and payer teams, or especially when considering potentially deploying this contract at the or this technology for value-based contracts at the individual patient level. So how does that program recognizer technology work that I just mentioned? Well, what we have is what we've built for all the patients that we screen against. We deploy this program recognizer technology, and that's based on both the rules and statistical probability to identify salient lexical features that are common to patients and programs. And it also includes a learning model that updates based on user feedback using a Bayesian methodology. So what does that all really mean? Well, it's certainly the technology and the statistics behind it are maybe above my head. But that's okay, because what we have built is an easy to understand scoring system where all patients are scored against all programs from 0 to 100. 100 meaning they're 100% eligible for that program, 0 meaning they're 100% not eligible for that program. Most patients fall somewhere in the middle of that range and requires further exploring of their medical records. But it's a great way to prioritize patients for specific programs, be that a clinical trial use case, a REMS program, or commercial marketing. And so then users can then set scoring cutoffs and rank and prioritize patient engagement, as well as optimize and organize their work queues. So the XUtility Alerts platform is designed for users to work hand in hand with the XCures team to add programs against which our 100,000 plus patient pool and growing can be screened for. So we work directly with your team to develop the content that gets delivered to each patient for each program. Eligible patient alerts are tracked as our NPI triggers back to the field teams. Conversion rates and success metrics are tracked for each program, which includes real-time feedback. And so functionally, the XUtility platform as a whole and the alerts feature specifically is designed to take the foundation paved by legacy real-world data providers and build upon it by developing more use cases and applications of the data. And the alerts feature specifically is designed to bring a real-time actionability to the data. So beyond that, XUtility is designed to address other unmet needs in the real-world data space by bringing a greater level of longitudinality and depth of data for each individual patient. Combining that depth and quality of data with real-time clinical actionability makes the XUtility Alerts platform a game-changing technology for life science companies who seek to use real-world data to improve efficiencies across the developmental life cycle, from clinical trial recruitment onto commercial pull-through. So I know that was a lot. I know I went pretty fast, but we only had about 30 minutes, and I wanted to make sure I left time for questions. So Patrick, who's our Vice President of Marketing, has been monitoring the chat box. I'm sure we have some questions coming in, and I'd be open, Patrick, to answering any of the questions now.
All right. Yes, so first, hi, Max, nice presentation. Why would patients sign up on the platform?
It's a great question. So patients in the US specifically tend to find that their data is disparately spread across multiple EMR systems. They have multiple physicians, they have had a long care journey, especially as patients age, they move, they switch providers, they switch insurers. I know, speaking myself, I've had several primary care physicians just in the last couple of years. So your data tends to get stuck in these EMRs. And what we do for each patient is we pull in all of that data from all those providers and sites of care and give it back to the patient as a personal health record so that they have all of their health data in one place. Moreover, patients do a little investigation, and depending on what communications from XCures they've received to get them to sign up, they might understand that we might also be looking for specific programs for them, clinical trials, or other treatment options that make sense for them. And patients generally like to have somebody, in the background besides their physician, kind of looking out for them, helping them say, hey, you might be eligible for this clinical trial, or hey, have you considered this product that you're eligible for, and there's great scientific data. So all it is to say is that patients like to have all their data in one place, and they also like having somebody out there who might be looking for options for them.
All right, thanks. This next question came in through the LinkedIn Live session. Hello, can we have access to this recording? Joined late.
Yes.
All right.
Everybody will get an email with the recording.
Perfect. Next question that came in. What indications do you have coverage of?
We have several large cohorts of patients across oncology. So we have close to 50,000 cancer patients. Immunology, cardiovascular disease are also highly represented in the pool. Also, you can think about another large patient pool as being kind of gen med. And then we have smaller cohorts in orphan and ultra orphan diseases. I would say by and large, though, our largest cohort from a therapeutic area standpoint, at a macro level, it's oncology, which obviously there are hundreds of different types of cohorts that you can kind of slice and dice based on that patient pool.
All right. There's a question from a guy I used to work with, Badri. Hypothetical, this is Badri from the Archimedes Day. I was wondering how you guys are the same or different from companies like Picnic Health.
Sure, good question. I know that Picnic Health uses the same kind of consent mechanisms to get access to patient data from all sites of care. They might even be using the health information exchanges as well. Where Execures differs is our technology and the translation and transformation of the data feeds that come off of the exchange, which, for instance, a cancer patient, when you get access to their data via the same consent processes Picnic uses, and again, maybe using the health information exchanges, maybe similar to Picnic. What comes back is about, on average, maybe 1,000 or more pages of medical records from all types of providers. And the ability to turn that essentially giant data dump of raw medical records into digestible and clinically actionable data in mere minutes is what makes Execures different.
All right, thank you. Question from Catherine. What's the current volume? How many patients in your system? How robust is the system to protect the data privacy?
Great question. I mean, we take on all the HIPAA risk, and we're at our core, patient data privacy and security is paramount. Patients trust us to have their data, and we take that very, very seriously. I mentioned before, our patient population is over 100,000 patients. Our average growth per month is about 5,000 new consents per month. Although depending on potential data partners that we have coming down the pipe, that number could rise dramatically. So right now it's 100,000, but I wouldn't be shocked if in just a year we're talking about 500,000 or even 1 million. And I should also mention, by the way, Patrick, you mentioned that data privacy and security. When we take on that PHI and that HIPAA risk, we only work with data. The data that leaves Execures is all de-identified, either through safe harbor or expert determination. So it's not like we tell, for instance, for this real-time clinical alerts, X utility alerts feature and functionality, we don't tell you who the patient is. That'd be a violation of HIPAA. So yeah.
All right. Another question from Badri. Also, is there any cost to patients to do this?
No, it's totally free for patients. Yeah.
And a question from Catherine. What's the region covered?
United States. We have patients in all 50 states, all corners of the country, and it's definitely representative sample of the population, especially when considering the treatment sites. So we have patients at very small rural practices, large community sites, and even the most robust academic medical centers. And the ratio or breakdown of that reflects what you would expect to see in the population. So high patient density in the cities, who are being seen at academic medical centers, with and then a large volume of patients sort of more out in the community, seeing at large community sites.
All right, I think this might be the last question from Badri. When you work with patient advocacy organizations, is it more you want them to let their community members know about your services, or do you establish sort of recruiting programs to build a bigger pool?
It's both. However, I would say that one of the main mechanisms through which an advocacy group would want to work with an XCures is probably dual. Two things. One, they advocacy groups like offering free services to patients, and this is certainly one of them, and a tool that many patients have found helpful. And two, a lot of advocacy groups want to do disease-specific research in the form of even running their own clinical registries. Registries are extremely expensive, and we found a way to significantly reduce the cost to advocacy groups to run their own registries using our software, and generate research grade data that they can use and share with their academic researchers and collaborators, which is another draw for advocacy groups to want to participate and engage with XCures and with our platform.
All right, I think that's basically it. Actually, from what you just mentioned, does that fit with our press release from yesterday? How we work with like the rare diseases and rare cancers?
Yes, we have advocacy group partners in large indications and very, very small and rare indications. Because of our different relationships with advocacy groups, the XCures patient volume might actually be overrepresentative in some rare diseases. For instance, I can think of one tumor type called fibrolamellar hepatocellular carcinoma, which has an annual incidence rate in the US of just a couple hundred. We probably have half of those patients on the platform at least. So it's certainly overrepresentative of fibrolamellar, but that's an ultra orphan disease where we just happen to have a ton of those patients based on the advocacy group relationship that we have. So some indications may be overrepresented or underrepresented depending on, again, the relationships that we have. So the platform is designed to also allow us to go out and find patients of particular interest to our partners. So if you say, hey, we're really interested in lung cancer patients, but we don't have enough of a sample size that you might want to see, we then could go out and design programs to partner with advocacy groups in that space to try to engage more patients through social media with that disease. So we have a lot of flexible models that based on how you'd like to engage with us.
All right, one last question just before the end of the hour. Is the patient population representative of the racial/ethnicity breakdown, or any systematic biases perhaps driving certain more willing to consent to this service?
It's a great question. And when we had only worked by consenting patients through our social media, direct-to-patient social media, I believe the population tended to skew slightly younger than published literature across tumor types. However, that's kind of gone away since a lot of our patients now have come through other partners and channels that are working with patients kind of across the board and not through kind of a myopic technology lens. It doesn't, you don't need to be tech savvy necessarily to work with an advocacy group, right? And some of our other partners as well, who are covered entities, are getting patient consent through delivering care at the point of care. So there's less kind of bias, I would say. I don't think we've done a true analysis across the population in terms of how race and ethnicity on our population mirrors that of the known published data. I would be surprised if it differed more, if it was statistically significant in difference. I would be truly surprised. Although we do have plans of running that analysis soon. And I will say that we also are able to get the social determinants of health data on all of our patients as well. So if that's, if you want to understand maybe the impact of this program in terms of helping patients of lower socioeconomic status, for instance, access these life-saving therapies, we can do kind of a retrospective look back and say, hey, the patients that we were able to help get your product, we could dig deep and look into their race, ethnicity, and socioeconomic status through their social determinants of health scores that we do have on each patient. So that's a functionality we have.
All right, I think we're done with the time. Thanks, Max.
Thank you all so much.